My older brother faked his death to trick me into paying off his debts. My brother and sister-in-law were supposed to pick me up from the train station on a stormy, rainy day, but tragically, they got into an accident and passed away. Even their bodies were unrecoverable. My mother constantly berated me, calling me a jinx who had killed the whole family. She thrust my 8-year-old nephew into my arms, ordering me to take care of him and pay off my deceased brother and sister-in-law's debts. Feeling guilty, I worked day and night, eventually paying off all the debt, but my health deteriorated to the point of hospitalization. Yet, the brother and sister-in-law who were presumed dead reappeared before me, arrogant and cocky. Mom was right, my brother sneered. You have a high degree, so you paid off the debt quickly and can even fund my son to a prestigious university. They complained that I was seriously ill and unlucky, impatiently kicking me out of the house. In the dark of night, I sought shelter from the rain under a filthy underpass, only to be swept away by floodwaters. When I opened my eyes again, my mother was standing in the middle of my brother and sister-in-law's funeral, fiercely scolding me. Mia, you jinx. We are unlucky for 8 lifetimes to give birth to a comet like you. You dared to kill your older brother and sister-in-law. Your brother was the pillar of the Kin family. Her angry, distorted face loomed before my eyes, a hand raised, and a burning pain on my face jolted me. The surroundings were no longer the underpass filled with garbage and foul odors, but my familiar home. My body felt light again, without the previous sickly sensations. Realizing I had been reborn, I chuckled. Seeing me still laughing, my mother became even more furious, jabbing her finger hard into my forehead. You can still laugh in such a storm? You still let your brother and sister-in-law drive to pick you up? Didn't you know how slippery the roads were? They died and you were happy. I brushed her hand away, frowning and retorting. Mom, you are not being fair. Who told you I asked them to come? It was clearly brother who insisted on picking me up. The WeChat messages are still saved. All the evidence is here. Don't arbitrarily blame me. In my previous life, upon hearing the news of my brother and sister-in-law's death, I was overwhelmed with fear and grief, with no mind to analyze my mother's words. Therefore, I carried immense guilt, working day and night for 10 years without a single day off just to pay off debts and atone for my brother and sister-in-law. But only when I was on my deathbed did I discover this was a massive conspiracy. My brother owed $30 million in gambling debts. Knowing he couldn't repay it, he faked his death to evade the debt. This life I would not be deceived by my mother's clumsy lies, and I would certainly not do anything for the brother and sister-in-law who had caused my death. Hearing me say this, my mother clutched her chest, collapsing onto the chair, feigning anger to the point of fainting. She called for the surrounding relatives to join in condemning me as an unfilial daughter. Those who came were all close relatives of my brother and sister-in-law. Naturally, they all sided with them. This child is so stubborn. Just apologize and be done with it. Her mother has suffered so much, and now she's making her angry. Truly unfilial. If I had a daughter like this, I would have beaten her to death already. A daughter is like spilled water. Once married out, where did she get the guts to order her brother to pick her up? Honestly, this Mia from the Kin family must be bad luck, destined to kill her family. Pitiful, truly pitiful. My mother used a handkerchief to wipe away tears, looking at me with resentful eyes. But I clearly saw a hint of gloating behind those eyes, rejoicing in others' misfortune. If it were the previous me, perhaps I would never understand the meaning behind it. When I was little, she also taught me that daughters should not rely on family and husbands but must be independent and self-reliant. But now, after experiencing the struggles and despair of my previous life, I gradually saw my mother's true colors. She unfortunately married an abusive husband and had a son addicted to gambling, trapped in the quagmire of marriage, tormented psychologically for a long time. She couldn't bear to see me living too comfortably outside, wanting to push me into a pit of fire. The relatives' accusations grew louder and louder. I was caught in the middle, my face gradually darkening. My mother saw her chance and pushed an 8-year-old child in front of me. Your brother and sister-in-law were killed by you. You must take responsibility for raising the only bloodline of the Kane family. The only bloodline? I sneered. Does the Kane family have a throne to inherit? The boy in front of me looked significantly taller than other 8-year-olds. He was wearing a neat school uniform, looking at me with cold, indifferent eyes. In my previous life, before my brother and sister-in-law faked their deaths, I occasionally met this nephew, only feeling he was naughty and mischievous. But my sister-in-law always doted on him like a treasure, telling everyone, Orion is just playful, but he is very well behaved and filial at home. He even competes with his dad to do chores. After raising him for 10 years, I knew clearly that my sister-in-law was just putting on airs. With the personalities of my brother Kane and my nephew Ryan, they absolutely never lifted a finger to do housework. Even the well-behaved son in my sister-in-law's mouth had violent tendencies. He not only bullied classmates at school but also hung out with a gang of hooligans, smoking, drinking, fighting, and even almost assaulted a neighbor's daughter. To discipline him, I spent money to get him into a prestigious university, pouring so much effort into him. But not only was he ungrateful, he also went everywhere complaining that I treated him harshly, not giving him enough food or pocket money and beating him for the slightest mistake, portraying me as a vicious woman. Even when I was seriously ill, he was the first to remove my oxygen tube without hesitation, returning to his biological parents who had disappeared for 10 years. He was just an ungrateful wretch. Facing my shrewish and unreasonable mother, I calmly said, "Mom, but I am not yet 30 years old. According to the law, I am not eligible to adopt Ryan. Moreover, Mom knows my job. I have to travel on business every day. How can I have time to take care of a child?" Unexpectedly, my mother, upon hearing this, shrieked, "Adopt? What adopt? Ryan is the child of your brother and sister-in-law. He is the third-generation grandson of the Kane family. If you transfer his household registration to your name, wouldn't he become your son? Where's the family order and system then? Furthermore, you should quit your job too. What kind of daughter is always running around everywhere? In the future, find a job closer to home to focus on taking care of Ryan." A relative stepped forward, surreptitiously slipping me a business card. "This girl looks decent. If you want to find a high-paying job, Uncle can introduce you." Without looking, I knew what it was. Working honestly to earn money would not pay off $30 million in debt even in a lifetime. So my mother had colluded with others, wanting to push me into a bar to get rich quick. My reputation would be ruined, but that didn't matter. My future life didn't matter either, just desperately earning money to make up for the losses so that the incompetent bloodline of the Kane family could live in peace. The business card was crushed in my hand and then thrown back at that despicable relative. "Mom, what are you saying? The bodies of my brother and sister-in-law have not even been found yet. How can you say they are dead? If brother and sister-in-law knew, they would be sad." My mother's face turned pale. Her hands trembled as she pointed at me. What are you talking about?" I laughed coldly, without hesitation stepping forward to open the lids of the two coffins. Inside, they were completely empty. In my previous life, after my brother and sister-in-law faked their deaths to avoid exposure, my mother not only quickly organized a quiet funeral in our hometown but also prepared 2 fake coffins. I once wanted to cancel my brother and sister-in-law's household registration, but my mother firmly refused, even keeping Ryan's name in their household registration. When I said my brother and sister-in-law's deaths were suspicious, she also forbade me from reporting to the police for investigation. I only thought she was grieving too much, unwilling to accept the fact that her son had died, so she didn't want to reopen the wound. Little did I know it was all her meticulous calculations for the return of her son and daughter-in-law. At this moment, the relatives who came to mourn were also stunned. They only saw 2 coffins set up in the house, immediately assuming there were people lying inside. Who would have thought they were empty? I took out my phone and called the police. 20 minutes later, the police arrived at my house. My mother sat in the living room surrounded by relatives and villagers. Facing the police's questions, she stammered, unable to speak coherently. She insisted that my brother and sister-in-law were driving on the road when, due to slippery roads, the car veered over the guardrail and rolled down the slope, disappearing. But the police had gone to the location she described and searched the surrounding area within a radius of several kilometers, but couldn't find any car wreckage, let alone bodies. They only rescued a few pigs running loose from the villagers. My mother then interrupted, "Police comrades, it's because my daughter is paranoid. There's no need to work so hard searching. If this is my son's fate, I accept it." I secretly said to the police, "You must open a case to investigate this disappearance." My mother is old and not in good spirits, not accepting my brother's accident, so she is deceiving herself and others that he is dead. But I am his younger sister, how can I ignore it? "You must put my brother and sister-in-law into the missing persons information system and search nationwide." The police glanced at my mother, who was panicking, and agreed to my suggestion. I smirked. In my previous life, only when I was about to die did I learn that, thanks to my mother not canceling their household registration in the years of their fake death, my brother and sister-in-law still blatantly used their ID cards. They traveled everywhere, even settling abroad, squandering the money I sent to my mother with no remorse. This life I would not let them live so comfortably. After finishing everything, I intended to leave, but Ryan unexpectedly rushed over and hugged my leg. "Auntie, I have no home anymore. If you don't take me with you, I will starve to death, freeze on the streets, and be kidnapped and sold." I observed his expression, exactly like my mother's when she cried. It turned out that just now, the two of them whispering in the corner was my mother teaching him how to pretend to be pitiful to win my sympathy. I stroked his head, my tone gentle. "Even if your parents died at the foot of the mountain, the person who has the obligation to raise you first is not me but your grandmother." As soon as I finished speaking, my mother let out a cry, quickly rolling her eyes and falling to the ground. Several policemen hurriedly helped her up and took her to the hospital for emergency treatment. Under the police's arrangement, I had to temporarily take Ryan home. Although I came here to visit relatives, I also had things to do, so I would stay for a while. This apartment was bought a few years ago, but I had never lived in it. The whole house was covered in dust. But as soon as Ryan entered the door, he kicked off his sneakers onto the sofa and roared, "I want to watch TV." He raised his hand, saw that it was covered in black dust, and immediately flew into a rage. "So dusty. Didn't you clean up before letting me in?" He stood up aggressively, walking towards me. I instinctively dodged, causing him to miss his punch. To discipline a brat, you have to be even more aggressive than him. I immediately spoke sternly. "Do you think you are a young master? I am not your parents and have no obligation to wait on you. Go change the bed sheets yourself. Then sleep. If you think my house is dirty, then go live on the streets." Ryan's rebellious nature, using the term brat to describe him, was still an understatement. Previously, I always felt guilty about my brother and sister-in-law's death. Even if he beat me black and blue, I would still try to calmly reason with him. But now I didn't want to waste another second on him. Cooking also prioritized convenience. What I ate, Ryan ate the same. 3 meals a day were mainly healthy. Fruits and vegetables, occasionally with fresh meat. Ryan was not used to eating it. He was so choked by chicken breast that his eyes rolled back. After chewing vegetables for a while, he started gagging. He dumped a mountain of mayonnaise into the bowl, but in the end, found it too greasy and threw the whole bowl onto the ground, yelling for hamburgers. I ignored him, only finishing my own portion, then turned away to wash the dishes. This went on for a week. One evening, when I was about to go to bed, I heard a noise in the living room. It was Ryan opening the door, stealthily sneaking out. I quietly pulled back the curtains and looked downstairs. In the dark of night, as soon as Ryan left the building door, he ran quickly towards 2 figures. It was my brother and the sister-in-law who had disappeared for so long. The family of 3 hugged tightly, then took their son into a fast food restaurant in the apartment complex. I immediately took out my phone, zoomed in on the image, and took a few photos of them. The next morning, I received a call from my mother. It must be that Ryan had tattled to his parents. She scolded me harshly for mistreating her grandson, demanding that I take Ryan to the supermarket to buy the snacks he liked as an apology. I chuckled. If Mom thinks I am not raising him well, why doesn't Mom come and raise him herself? My mother angrily hung up the phone. As soon as I put down the phone, Ryan's homeroom teacher called again. She said anxiously, "Ryan's auntie Ryan is very agitated, threatening suicide at school. Please, come immediately." Hearing the teacher say this, I smiled again. The opportunity had come. Although I didn't believe Ryan would commit suicide, I still quickly went to school. When I met Ryan in the office, he was being hugged and comforted by the teacher, deliberately avoiding my gaze. The homeroom teacher looked at me with a somewhat reproachful gaze. She pulled me aside. "The child just lost his parents. His mental state is very fragile. Why did you scold and provoke him like that?" I was surprised. When did I scold him? Seeing Ryan's smug eyes, I realized he was playing the old trick from my previous life again, spreading rumors everywhere to retaliate against me. I sighed. My brother and sister-in-law said when they were alive that they hoped I would be strict with him. You also see Ryan's grades, right? Without urging him, how can he get into Tsinghua? His parents are gone. I have to play the bad guy. Do you think it's easy for me? The homeroom teacher was speechless because Ryan's grades were indeed at the bottom of the class. She could only tell me to take the child home to rest for a day. I agreed. When I went into the classroom to get Ryan's school bag, I saw a hair clip on his desk that looked very familiar. The girl at the same desk noticed my gaze and took off the hair clip. showing it off to me. Beautiful, right? Ryan bought it. For me for 100 yuan. It's so pretty. I remember this was a birthday gift my friends gave me last year because I saw my name engraved on the back. I was about to ask the girl more when Ryan suddenly appeared behind me, pushing me hard. Seeing me almost fall, he clapped his hands and laughed triumphantly. I was slightly angry, pulling him in front of me and asking, "Didn't your mother teach you not to take other people's things? Why did you take my hair clip and sell it to others?" He giggled and made faces at me, intending to evade the question. But I didn't intend to let it go so easily. He then irritably wriggled his body and yelled loudly, "So what if I took yours? If you are so capable, then sue me. If anything happens to me, see how Grandma deals with you." Although I had decided this life I would not care about him anymore, seeing that he had no education or integrity, I still couldn't help but raise my hand and slap him hard. "Ryan, you are truly hopeless." Ryan was stunned by my slap, staring at me blankly. The arrogance instantly vanished without a trace. I continued to press him and, finally, he reluctantly spoke the real purpose, just wanting to exchange it for some money to buy game cards. I punished him to write an 800-word self-criticism and ensure he would not repeat it in the future. But who knew from where my mother heard the news? She hurriedly rushed over, crying and complaining that I deliberately abused her grandson. In the end, heartbroken, she led Ryan away. I watched their backs as they left, smiling contentedly. My goal was finally achieved. Ryan stayed at his grandmother's house for several days. It was said that he refused to go to school and whined and begged for his grandmother's payment password, then freely ordered takeout, eating, drinking lavishly regardless of day and night. My mother's savings were almost spent by him, but she dared not advise him. As soon as she advised him, he threw tantrums, so she had to turn to me for help. I sighed into the phone, "Mom, I have no way. He doesn't even listen to you, let alone me. But anyway, he is the only grandson of the Kin family, and ancestors will bless him. Surely he will grow up successful. What is there to worry about?" Seeing that I didn't fall for her trick, my mother was silent for a moment. Then, she started crying on the phone, complaining about poverty to me. "Mia, actually, Mom has been hiding something else from you. Before your brother passed away, he owed a little money outside. In the family, only you are the pillar. Please save the Can family." I casually retorted, "Didn't brother and sister-in-law leave behind a school district apartment? Mom, sell it to pay off the debt." Although I said so, I knew clearly that selling the dilapidated apartment was not enough to pay off even a fraction of my brother's debt. My mother hurriedly said, "Cannot sell. Without that apartment, how can Ryan get into a good school?" I kindly reminded her that apartment can only guarantee him to finish junior high school. I advised Mom to recognize reality early. Don't keep dreaming that your grandson will get into Tsinghua or Peking University anymore. Moreover, debts have debtors, Mom. Don't just target me. Why is the person who borrowed money, spent it, and enjoyed it my brother, but the person who suffers and repays the debt is me? After speaking, I didn't care what my mother said on the other end of the line, directly hung up and blocked her number. In the next few days, I lived peacefully for a while. But not long after, I suddenly received a phone call in the middle of the night. A relative anxiously informed me, "Mia from the Kin family, your grandson ran away from home. Your mother can't contact you and is worried to death. Hurry up and help find your grandson." I woke up instantly. Ran away from home? Really? Has it been reported to the police? The relative hesitated. Oh, at this time, why bother with that? Going to the police station takes too much time. Family members searching themselves is faster. I understood this was another play to trick me. He continued, "Before running away, Ryan also left a note on the table. On it was written 3 words, 'I hate you.' Your mother insists it was because of your slap at school that left a psychological shadow on him. She has been at home all week and still can't recover." Finally, angrily, he decided to run away from home. I sneered. Ran away from home? I bet he ran to his parents' place. But I still underestimated Ryan's vengeful mentality. He aggressively posted a video on social media, lamenting about how he became an orphan and the coldness of his relatives after losing his parents. While I naturally became the target of criticism, forced into the role of a vicious ant in his narrative, netizens sympathized with him. So they competed to condemn me. They even used the information and background in the video to find my home address and workplace, publicly attacking me. Only feeding the child vegetables? So young, not eating meat? How can he grow up? Heard the child's parents had a car accident when picking up his auntie. She is not grateful but instead abuses her brother's child. Why slap the child in front of the whole class like that? Even if it's discipline, you can't trample on the child's self-esteem. Oh, I'm so angry. I'm going to faint. Truly a vicious woman. The video went straight to trending with more and more people paying attention. My door was splashed with dirty water, the walls were pelted with rotten eggs, and someone even sent wreaths. On the cards were filled with vicious and abusive words. Even the debt collectors came to me. They wore sunglasses, faces fierce and arrogant. A dozen people blocked in front of my door, not letting me leave. Your brother is dead, so his debt must be repaid by you. If you don't give out 1 million today, we will confiscate all valuables in your house, then break your legs and drag you out to the street for you to beg your way home. I was chilled to the bone. The loan sharks came so quickly. Certainly my mother, brother, and sister-in-law had a hand in this. They couldn't get money from me, so they sent the debt collectors to directly find me. I tried to remain calm, speaking slowly and deliberately. But I am just an employee. Even if you sell me, my assets are not enough to pay off even a few cents of my brother's debt. Threatening me is useless. But my brother just borrowed money and then died. Isn't that a bit too coincidental? Said it was a traffic accident, but no trace was found. Moreover, before disappearing, he took away all valuables in the house. Don't you find it strange? I opened a short video on the screen. It was Ryan's face, smeared with tears and snot, crying. I zoomed in on the alley behind him, the clothes drying on the balcony of that house and the shoes drying on the ground. Don't they look familiar? They are all my brother and sister-in-laws. As far as I know, their family also has a school district apartment and no shortage of luxury goods and jewelry. If you go there now, you might still be in time. The debt collectors didn't completely believe my words, but their main target was my brother and sister-in-law, so they still left to find them first. As soon as they left, I quickly packed my luggage and took a car to travel on business elsewhere, intending to avoid them for a few days. After a while, Ryan ran away from home, then sneaked back to his grandmother's house again, but my brother and sister-in-law were nowhere to be found without any news. However, when I finished my business trip, an incident occurred. The security camera I installed at home warned of an intruder. I opened the monitoring software and saw my sister-in-law stealthily rummaging through things in the house while Ryan stood guard at the door for her. In fact, in my previous life, when I took Ryan home to raise, my house was also occasionally missing things from daily necessities to cash and jewelry. But at that time, I was busy making money and didn't pay attention, occasionally discovering something unusual. When I asked Ryan, he also looked at me like I was crazy, pretending to be upset, blaming me for misremembering. Thinking about it now, my brother and sister-in-law must have treated my house as a free shopping place, coming and going freely while their son helped them cover it up. Therefore, this time I had learned my lesson and installed cameras in hidden corners of the house. The taxi stopped in front of the building. I dragged my suitcase upstairs. Just as I stepped out of the elevator, I saw Ryan standing guard in front of my door. I walked up to him and asked, "What are you doing here?" Ryan raised his face arrogantly, saying, "Do I need your permission to come here? Grandma already said your house is my house. I can come whenever I want." I squeezed past him, intending to go inside, but he used his chubby body to block the door. "Didn't you tell me you would not be home tonight? You should find another place to stay. I am not used to having strangers in the house." I pushed him away. "Strangers? To this house, you are the stranger." As soon as I entered the door, I bumped into my sister-in-law in the living room. "Sister-in-law, I don't remember inviting you to come to my house to play, right? Why did you sneak in the middle of the night and pack so many of my things? Where are you planning to take them?" My sister-in-law was slightly flustered, patting her knees, standing up. "Mia, tonight my son is afraid of the dark. I came here to sleep with him." Seeing the fruit on the tea table was still fresh, I thought of conveniently taking some home to eat. It's all just a misunderstanding. I glanced at the suitcase. It wasn't just fruit. My designer handbags were also stuffed inside. Even my toilet paper was not. Spared. It seemed my brother and sister-in-law were truly at the end of their rope, to the point of even stealing toilet paper. I sneered. But my mother insisted that you and brother died because of me, and even forced Ryan on me to raise, forcing me to pay off debts for you too. Could it be that you two colluded to fake your deaths to trick me? Moreover, you even broke into my house to steal. I don't think this is a misunderstanding, right? How about inviting sister-in-law to the police station for a trip to talk it out clearly? My sister-in-law panicked, pointing at my face, saying, "Don't slander me. I worked hard to give birth to a son. For the Kane family. You people should be grateful to me. What's wrong with coming to your house to play? What's wrong with taking some of your things? Moreover, what's wrong with letting you raise my son for the Kane family? It's just that the debt collectors are pressing too hard. We had to hide. But you, as a biological sister, only know how to stand by and watch, not knowing how to help pay off the debt, not even lending a penny." My hands clenched tightly, my palms pale because my fingernails were digging into them. Seeing this, my sister-in-law became even more triumphant, closing the suitcase, intending to drag it away. I grabbed her. "This matter is not over yet." I took out my phone from my coat pocket, held it in front of her. My sister-in-law's face appeared on the live stream screen, her complexion gradually turning pale. "There are still some things sister-in-law has not explained clearly. Ryan clearly knew you two were still alive. Why did he deliberately make a video pretending to be pitiful to slander me? How should this debt be calculated?" On the screen was the live stream interface. The number of online viewers had reached 100,000 and was still continuing to increase. On the way back, I had posted all the photos and screenshots of the security camera on social media, at the same time declaring myself to be the person involved. Some netizens commented in my defense. Turns out the whole family is planning to bleed her dry, from the grandmother to the brother and sister-in-law, including the grandson. No one is good, almost got tricked by that brat. Disgusting. There were also people who expressed disbelief, hiding and running for so long, finally speaking up. Must be guilty. Don't think a few splice photos and videos can convince us. Neens are not easily fooled. To respond to these doubts, I decided to live stream before going home. Now the truth was clear before everyone's eyes. My sister-in-law slumped to the ground, her lips trembling, her hands pounding on the floor, yelling loudly, "No, it's not like that. It's your brother who is blinded by gambling, losing all his money. The idea to fake death to trick you was also thought up by him and his mother. I didn't know anything." The door opened. My mother rushed in. As soon as she saw the live stream, she immediately rushed to my side. First, she strode over and slapped my sister-in-law twice, hands on hips, scolding loudly, "What nonsense are you talking? I see you're crazy." Then she snatched my phone. While turning off the live stream, she cursed, "Ungrateful wretch. Who eats at my house and in my yard? People say family scandals should not be aired publicly, yet you insist on making a big fuss to let the whole world know. Turns out, in my mother's heart, my grandson fabricating stories online to ruin my reputation was not a family scandal, but me demanding justice for myself was." I stepped back a few steps, quietly keeping a distance from her. Turning back, I saw my sister-in-law had been grabbed by the collar by my mother, dragged up from the ground. My sister-in-law's hair was disheveled, her face pale, her whole body trembling, standing barefoot on the floor, looking very pathetic. I suddenly felt pity for her. When she first came to her husband's house, she was also a lively and bright girl, but under the torment of a lazy husband and a mischievous son, she had become such a woman. My mother scolded my sister-in-law for losing face. My sister-in-law cried and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. My family is so poor that we can't even afford a roll of toilet paper." He complained to me even when he went to the toilet. "What can I do?" I interjected. "Really? Where did all the money I sent to Mom over the years go? Mom didn't give brother a single penny? Impossible." My sister-in-law was surprised, looking up. It seemed she had no idea about this. My mother was originally a miser. Even if she had money, she couldn't bear to spend it on herself, but all of it went to her son. Even in my previous life, when I was struggling to pay off, she still kept asking me for living expenses, then took it to support her son. Hearing this, my sister-in-law angrily ran to find her husband to settle accounts. I kindly called a car for her. My mother and Ryan squeezed into the car, scolding me harshly for meddling in other people's business. I said directly, "Driver, these two are not passengers. Wait for them to get out then. Please drive." Only then did my mother shut up. My sister-in-law hurriedly returned to where they lived. She yelled loudly, "Cain, you come out here and explain clearly to me. Where did you hide all the money?" My brother didn't answer. The one who answered her was a young girl, dressed sloppily, hugging her chest, running out from inside the room. My sister-in-law was furious to the extreme, kicking open the door and rushing in, grabbing things nearby and throwing them at my brother. My brother, with a stubbled beard, bloodshot eyes, looked at her, calmly taking out a cigarette and smoking. My sister-in-law again punched him in the chest, crying. She sobbed, "I gave birth to a son for the Cain family, yet you treat me like this." Finally, my brother lost his patience, raising his hand and slapping her hard in the face. The slap was even louder than my mother's, 10 times louder. "Can you shut up? I can do whatever I want." My sister-in-law, hurt by the slap, covered her face and backed away. She wanted to resist but didn't dare, then tremblingly pointed at me. "It's your younger sister who instigated us. She said Mom secretly gave you money." Only then did my brother notice me standing beside him. He smiled at me. "Little sister, do you have any money? Lend brother some for now. When I have money later, I will definitely pay you back." He probably hadn't bathed for weeks, his face greasy, his hair matted, his body reeking of a sour stench, looking very slovenly. I pinched my nose, stepping back 2 steps, keeping away. "Stay away from me." At this moment, I only felt his hypocritical face was disgusting. My brother's smile vanished, his face darkened. "Mia, if it wasn't for my mom not having the heart that year, you would have been drowned in the urine bucket long ago. You were just a daughter who needs to make up for the family's loss. What right do you have to be arrogant in front of me? Lending me some money, what's the big deal? Truly husband and wife. Their words are the same." I sneered. "Living in this world, you have to know your place, Cain. You are just a grown child, a leech. Only the C family treats you like a treasure." My brother intended to rush up to hit me but was stopped by my mother again. I knew she was not afraid of me being beaten but knew her son completely inherited his father's personality. Once he started, he couldn't stop. If he beat me to death, there would be no one left to pay off their debts. But my brother still roared, "You were born because of me. If it wasn't to compensate for me, you would not have appeared in this world at all. You have no right to laugh at me." Ryan also rushed over, pushing me hard. "If you don't help my dad now, just wait. When I become successful later, the first thing I will do is kill you." My sister-in-law also tearfully blamed me. "It's all because of you. There. Right, you, the jinx of the Cain family." Under the accusations of these so-called relatives, I clenched my fists, my fingernails almost piercing through my skin. Although I had long been disappointed in them, only today did I truly see the true faces of these people. After a long while, I laughed. "Okay then. Just wait and see. I am also very much looking forward to seeing how miserably you will live without me in this life." I quickly sold the apartment here, then returned to the city where I worked and lived. To avoid being disturbed, I also changed to a new phone number. Although I had completely cut ties with Cain, I still occasionally heard news about him from familiar relatives. Cain was a civil servant. After faking death failed, he intended to return to work, but his gambling was reported, so he was fired. Dejectedly returning home, he continued to live off his mother. Seeing that he couldn't repay a penny, the debt collectors became more and more aggressive, guarding in front of his house day and night. He couldn't escape and didn't dare to step out of the house, only able to rely on his mother, who was over 60 years old, to buy food and drink every day. But my mother's money was also running out. 4. Mouths eating and spending very quickly. Every day the whole family could only eat pickled vegetables. Cain even fought with my mother for half a steamed bun, pushing her to the ground. Her head hit the sharp edge of the tea table, blood flowing freely. The white carpet was stained red over a large area. They had no money for treatment, so they didn't intend to take her to the hospital for emergency treatment but just watched my mother breathe her last. After dragging her body to a wasteland, Cain nonchalantly lay on the bed, continuing to play games and watch TV all day, treating his wife like a second mother. My sister-in-law, the more she thought about it, the more frightened she became, afraid she would have the same fate as her mother-in-law. A few days later, using the excuse of going to buy food, she ran away to her mother's house. Before leaving, she also did not forget to take her son with her. One day, while at work, I suddenly received a call from an unknown number. My sister-in-law's choked voice rang out from the other end. "Mia, can you save my son and me? We have been kicked out of the house. Now we are just wandering the streets. No matter how hard I suffer, it's okay, but Ryan is a descendant of the Cain family. Just lend us a little money, please. I beg you." I asked her how much she wanted to borrow. She said a six-figure number. I told her I am not a charity. I cannot meet your request. I can only, out of past sisterhood, lend you a small amount of money for you to manage. I hung up and transferred 10,000 yuan to her account. Honestly speaking, 10,000 yuan was enough for the mother and son to rent a house for half a year. During that time, as long as they found a stable job, they could live in any city. But only a month later, I heard bad news about Ryan. Social News was carrying a very prominent headline: 8-year-old boy imitates robbery and is killed by robber. Although the scene photos had been blurred, I still recognized it was Ryan. As a relative, I was called to the police station to give a statement. I also met my sister-in-law again after a long time. She curled up in a corner of the police station, her eyes swollen, tears streaming down her face, occasionally sobbing. The police told me this woman is severely agitated. Her spirit seems to have problems. We have checked the household registration relationship and reviewed the call history, only then finding you through inquiries. Through the process of questioning, I learned that my sister-in-law had received the 10,000 I sent, but because she was too impatient, she did not use the money to rent a house. Instead, she went online to find ways to get rich quickly, living next to Cain for so long. She was also infected with gambling habits. Believing in those fraudulent advertisements online, she invested all 10,000 yuan. The result was naturally tragic. The other side took the money and disappeared without a trace. The mother and son wandered the streets again. Because they were too hungry, Ryan imitated TV dramas, picked up a knife in the trash can, and went lurking in a small alley. But he unfortunately encountered a real robber. The robber was a criminal who had just been released from prison. With a fierce temper provoked by Ryan, he killed the boy. The first person to arrive at the scene was my sister-in-law. Hearing her son's miserable cries and seeing the bloody scene, she panicked to the point of going crazy. Before leaving, I only asked one question: "Where's the child's father?" The police shook their heads, saying they could not be contacted. I nodded, turned around, and walked away. My sister-in-law was sent to a mental hospital. If her condition did not improve, she might have to stay there for the rest of her life. But that was not something I cared about. In my previous life, I devoted all my energy to taking care of my nephew and paying off debts for my brother, thus giving up my beloved job. But in this life, I was able to fully dedicate myself to my field and continuously win a number of prestigious international awards, also considered to have made a name for myself. 3 years later, I was preparing to go abroad on a business trip. Before leaving, I received a call from the police again. The voice on the other end of the line said they had found Cain's whereabouts. After 3 years of disappearance, Cain still could not repay his debts, nor did he want to work. His wife and son had both left him. After waiting impatiently, the debt collectors lost patience. Finally, they forced him to sell the apartment he was living in. Then they drugged him, kidnapped him, harvested all his organs, then dumped his body in a wasteland near his home. Coincidentally, that place was not far from where he had dumped my mother's body. It was said that while alive, he was cruelly tortured. His body was very horrific. The police asked me if I wanted to come and identify the body. I refused bluntly. If possible, donate his organs. If not, just cremate him directly. The boarding announcement for my flight sounded. Without hesitation, I boarded the plane to go on a business trip abroad. Brother, this is the ending you deserved. Farewell, and may you be a good person in the next life.